everyone. Maybe not a great time to be in the money laundering business in Cambodia. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hi everyone, it's Alan Schimmel. Welcome to another Techstrong Gang and happy Thursday to you. We have a delightful panel. Did I say delightful? Yes, I said delightful panel today. Let me introduce you to them quickly because we got a lot to talk about. Still out in Las Vegas behind his blackout curtains. He won't tell us if he's been down at the tables at all or not, but he has been covering stories. He's our Silicon Valley expert, John Swartz. Hey, John, how are you, man?
I'm good. Hi, everybody. Yes, I'm perched on the 25th floor of the Venetian overlooking the Wynn Hotel. And can't wait to go home.
I'm sure. Well, there is that 3-day Vegas rule. Thanks, John. All right, moving from John, we're going to head north. Not all the way north, just to maybe Ohio north for our Techstrong AI and Techstrong IT editor, Sulagna Saha. Sulagna, welcome. It's great to see you.
Hi, Alan. Hello, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. And then heading to the true north, the man in the maple leaf here is our
strong and free.
Strong and free. Shark elbows out. Our security cyber person, Chris Blask. Hey, Chris, how are you?
I am delightful, apparently.
Good.
Glad to be here.
Glad to have you on. And then moving from Chris, we running the anchor lap in this 4x100. He's our chief content officer. He's not in Harrison, New York, though. He's actually down at a Nutanix conference. Our chief content officer, Mike Vizard.
I'm in Washington, D.C., otherwise known as Chaos Central. Happy to be here with you guys.
Let's not even go there. So Mike, it looks like our vaunted Treasury Department has sprung into action. We found that evidently a Cambodian-based group, Ban We One. I believe that's how it's pronounced. If I got it wrong, I apologize. Don't take my foe away. But Ban We One, and they were laundering $4 billion of North Korean money. Now, $4 billion is an awful lot of money in Cambodia. I got to tell you, I am reminded about 12 years ago, I taught a security class in Singapore, cybersecurity class, with regional banks from all over the region, Vietnam, Cambodia, Singapore, Malaysia, New Guinea, Papua New Guinea, others. And I asked, what kind of firewalls did you have? Everyone raised their hand and told me what kind of firewall they had, except the Bank of Cambodia. I said, what kind of firewall do you have? You didn't raise your hand. They said, we don't have a firewall. I said, well, why don't you have a firewall? He said, well, we really don't have that much money. It was a revelation to me. So $4 billion is something like the GDP of the whole company, Mike. How the heck were they hiding this?
All right. So as I understand it, this is really an online exchange set up by a bunch of Chinese folks who based it in Cambodia. So that's where the funding and the money comes from. And we were talking last week about this whole push by the UN to identify countries that are helping with this online scamming. And if you read that whole report, you'll find these guys mentioned it prominently as kind of one of the exchanges that everybody's using to launder their money. And now the United States Treasury Department is trying to make a case for disconnecting these folks from the U.S. financial system so that you can't launder money. I'm not quite clear if that's going to work or if this is something we should just be doing more broadly. But Chris, you follow this whole space, and I've long argued that a lot of the cybersecurity stuff, at least the defenses, is really a financial crime. But is this going to work, and do we need more of it?
I just want to, take a moment to say, yeehaw, go team for good old law enforcement, right? To be clear, this is horrendous. This is crime, corruption, bad operations. It's good to see it taken down. Period, done. However it gets there, and I think it highlights an issue near and dear to my heart. First.org, the Forum for Incident Response and Security Teams, has grown up from the days of U.S. CERT back in the late 1980s. And having a national CERT and having that sort of infrastructure is a good sign of the fact that you may be a kind of nation where organizations can exist, like banks and enterprises inside of, and deal with the outside world in some sort of stable fashion. And as we go into this, I should have looked. I don't know if there's a good Cambodian CERT. Obviously, if so, they got some work to do. But this is the international policy side of cybersecurity. SWIFT codes and the financial banking system. These aren't cybersecurity things. These are international relations. And in today's environment, I just feel good to be able to, cheerlead something that's going on. I don't know the causality of the decision to take this action, but I agree with the action.
I agree too. And let's there's a country we haven't mentioned. They're on the scroll, the ticker scroll underneath. That's really the culprit here. And that's North Korea. I don't care who they're supplying drones, weapons, or packaged meat as people to go be grist mill for the Ukrainians to shoot at. They are an axis of evil country who perhaps 20 to 30% of their GDP is recognized by financial hacking. And the Chinese give them air cover, but it's the North Koreans who are the ones doing a lot of this hacking, and they appear to be the ones that are really behind this particular takedown.
Well, right. It's easy to blame, the actor in this case, the one that's been shut down, the bank in Cambodia. But, in a purely, strategic, defensive, offensive, frame, you have to see them as the victim. Right? They're doing this because someone paid them to. Some other actor, actually caused it. And I have had a long interest in smaller countries and their progress, and it's not as perhaps philanthropic as it sounds. I think there are things we can do as security professionals in smaller jurisdictions that are hard to do in bigger ones, just because they're smaller and simpler to work with. And in the classic example of that is Yemen. I went to Yemen during the Arab Spring, that little moment of peace they had between dictatorship and the Houthis marching in, trying to establish a Yemeni CERT. And the argument being that right now, if I see an IP address coming from Yemen and I work in the IT center anywhere, I have every right to say, Yemen? I don't know if that's good. There's no CERT, there's no structure, there's no order. Therefore, you can't have the economic opportunities. I gave a talk at the University of Sanaa to the group of young folks who had overthrown their dictatorship, and trying to lay out this path of opportunity for them where they can engage with the rest of the world in a way that is not being exploited by external players with the money. And it's exactly what we see happening in this case again. So again, blame, we can blame the Cambodia itself, blame the bank, but the responsibility lays in those who exploited them for their own purposes.
Agreed. North Korea.
Yes. Burn in.
You got to keep your eyes on that, on where that problem lies, right? We see it over and over again. I've seen it firsthand personally. They are a blight in the world community of nations. And if we weren't in such a dysfunctional, dystopian reality right now, I think the rest of the world would do something about it. Anyway, anybody else on this particular topic? Otherwise, let's take a break and come back and talk about some human verification. All right, you're watching Techstrong Gang.
All right, folks, we're back and we're talking now about, well, something I never thought I'd actually see, but apparently in a retail store, you can go get your retina validated to ensure that you are a human. I thought we were supposed to validate the machines, but maybe we need to validate the people. John, I know that you looked at this, but Alan, let's start with you on this one. But what's your take on this? Is this the wave of the future, or is this just some oddball thing being led by our friends over at the OpenAI founding team there?
Look, I don't think this is so far out. I do this every time I get on an airplane now, right? I'm clear. And I don't do the fingerprint. I do the retina scan. They've got new machines. They're really handy dandy, nice machines. And it takes like 3 seconds to do. I'm sitting here right now dealing with a friend's company who unfortunately was the victim of a breach that led to a wire of over $800,000 being done. And they're trying to get that money. And it was done because one party received one email purporting to be an email from someone saying, I'm changing my banking information. Here's the new wire information. And this other party went and excuse my language, went and sent $800,000 plus based upon that one email. Anything we could do to verify and cut out this kind of fraud is well worth it. And more power to Sam Altman and OpenAI. I assume they'll be doing this in a not-for-profit way since they've decided not to leave the not-for-profit. But I don't see, what's a big deal here?
It's it's a little bit dystopian to me. I mean, just the kind of the phrasing or the way it was positioned. They refer to this proof of human technology that they're using.
Well, proof of humanity. It's the technology that offers you proof of human. Let me tell you
About
what
any event.
Go ahead.
I mean, this orb is this gadget trying to figure out to verify our humanness by scanning our eyeballs. The reason why I'm a little bit creeped out by this is that this has been tried before. It's been around for a couple of years, and it caused some issues, though. I mean, this is my whole story about Real ID and how I'm resisting it as long as I can. It's just like the idea of somebody storing so much information of me in the event of a security breach, like what happened in Kenya with the same service that led to usernames and passwords stolen. Same thing happened in Spain and Hong Kong. That's my only pause. You're right, Alan. I mean, every time we flew down here, I had to do the camera like I always do. So they have photo ID. There are cameras everywhere. We live in that type of culture now. So I guess this is just another layer of verification so that we're not taken advantage of by someone, our AI pretending to be a human and trying to rip us off. So I have mixed feelings about it. The tech industry to me is just got its hands so deep inside of our personal information. This goes back, Larry Ellison talked about this type of concept years ago with a kind of a voter, an ID card, and the technology wasn't quite there yet. So anyway, that's kind of how I feel about it. Mixed feelings.
I think the goal here is to create a biometric ID network, which is called the world, which will help separate out humans from humanoids, especially for banking, government services, and apparently dating apps too, where the human or AI problem is becoming more common. But there's a catch. So, like John mentioned, that there is this thing has been around a while, and then it says that biometric data is deleted, and what remains is an anonymized cryptographic key. But the question many people are raising is if that information is stolen, how hard would it be to impersonate people online? Because prior to this, orb was launched in Kenya and Argentina, but they were halted over the same privacy and security concerns.
So the company world has ties to cryptocurrencies, right? So this app includes a digital wallet that gives us access to decentralized finance and cryptocurrencies. So,
And also,
um,
anybody who enrolls gets a world coin, which is the cryptocurrency, which is worth like under $1, I think, today. So those who signed up in the inaugural event were rewarded about 150 crypto tokens.
So, Chris, if there was a government out there that was going to use this for nefarious purposes, what would they be doing? What might that look like?
Everything. I think we had to pause for a minute though and appreciate the humor and the irony in this in the world where memes have developed to a high level of sophistication. That I am, prove you're not a robot. Like, and now we're literally talking about you physically trying to prove you're not a robot, and we know we can't even do it on the screen, which is funny. And as you look out through the rest of the century and the next century, personhood and what is a digital person, and even though that's sort of over the horizon from here, we need to think about these things because the systems we build today will inform those. But the short answer to your question goes back to what I said in the last segment. This is Internet 0.7. We haven't built an internet yet. This is not it. We're not using it. And this is a perfect example of one of my favorite things that we have not addressed identity yet on the internet, like at all, right? I mean, we kind of have. I mean, we have conferences and we have technologies and companies, and we've also been billions of dollars. But it's a perfect example, and John, and Alan, the story with the email. We haven't even got the business process in place where some human can say, "Oh, that's not enough authorization for me to send $800,000 in a wire." So impersonating that human with an AI is kind of beside the point. We haven't got the systemic process together, but it's these sorts of things that drive us down the path because our jury-rigged, hacked together, redneck, duct tape system breaks right here.
It's fragile. It is
Have to
fragile.
make the change
And
at
when
this point.
you start cutting things like CISA and doing some of the things we're doing, we need leadership to put together the system of tomorrow in security. It's one of the things, Chris, I missed you at RSA this year, but RSAC conference, RSAC company is trying to fill that vacuum of leadership that we were
you want a
getting.
sense of irony, Ellen? When we were out in San Francisco at RSAC, the day that Christy Nome was basically talking about CISA, the destruction of it or dismantling of it, let's say, was when they were rolling out this technology in San Francisco, and they're going to be rolling it out in 5 other cities. So this is all happening at the same time. So I'm glad
I
you
thought
brought it up.
I thought you were going to say she went down to the floor looking for the puppies.
Yeah, that was
Well,
one of
so
the great segments. Yeah.
let me posit this though. Is it going to be feasible for a government to decide to issue a subpoena to the folks running this program, and then they're going to determine that Sulagna is a threat to humanity here, because she looks very dangerous, and then we'll just disconnect her from all the internet services out there because we'll have her retinal eye scanned, and that'll be that.
Well, yes, but this goes again back to the last segment. Countries, evolution happens at the international scale as well, and what's going on with policy management and implementation inside the United States, let's say that politely, is what it is. But the rest of the world is still here, right? So if the U.S. population, U.S. federal government or whatnot, can or cannot do certain things like provide leadership on these topics in this time, others probably will, right? And because again, the answer to your question is yes. If there's a jurisdiction in a country, that allows that allows a government to make those sort of choices, that's entirely technically and legally and logistically possible. In the longer term, I think what we'll find out one way or the other is how competitive a country like that is with all the other ones around it. Because I would posit that sort of policy is restrictive to productivity, trade, freedom, life, happiness, and everything else. And that doesn't tend to work out well in the long term.
Agreed. Look, we'll, Chris, as you say, I think we got bigger fish to fry, but this is, technology marching on. And John, I hope you got your real ID. Otherwise, it's a long walk from Las Vegas to San Francisco.
I got my passport.
All right.
So evidently
That'll
that
do.
works.
That'll do.
Yeah, I hope.
All right, you're watching
Easy.
Techstrong Gang. Let's come back and we're going to talk about AI Agent Command Center. Sounds like something out of Maxwell Smart. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
Join CruiseCon Virtual on May 22nd, 2025 for breakthrough strategies to address advanced threat intelligence, proactive incident response, exclusive bonus material, and regulatory adaptation. Hear from our keynote speaker, Admiral Michael S. Rogers, former director of the National Security Agency, and an outstanding lineup of industry experts as they navigate emerging threats, the core principles of crisis management, and the evolution of CISO leadership. Register now for free.
Hey folks, we're back and we're going to return to the topic of AI agents because, well, ServiceNow, similar to a conversation we had yesterday, has a command center for AI agents, and it seems to be it's all about orchestration. We're starting to hear this theme over and over again, but we have John on the scene. So let's just go right to John and say, what's going on with ServiceNow and AI agent management?
Orchestration is the word. I think IBM mentioned that. Well, probably as well. I think this was a major theme at ServiceNow's Knowledge 25 conference, which is in Vegas. So they're kind of falling into a pattern. ServiceNow announced something called an AI control tower, which is a centralized, as you said, Mike, centralized command center for many ServiceNow and third-party AI agent model and workflow on a single unified platform. What's interesting is, and again, I'm going to add some context to this because they're announcing a ton of AI-related partnerships, including one with IBM, NVIDIA. Oh, by the way, y'all, I have a quick quiz for you. There was a special guest at the end of the 90-minute keynote yesterday. Guess who it was? You only get one guess.
A special guest?
Jensen Wang from NVIDIA.
In a leather coat.
Oh, geez. I mean, it's basically NVIDIA and ServiceNow are the same company. They almost want to position you into believing that they are in the same parallel paths. And in a sense, too, there's a little bit more bravado from Bill McDermott, which is saying a lot because he has a lot of self-confidence. And he was kind of feeling his oats. And I mentioned to a couple of the ServiceNow executives the fact that they're doing things so quickly and whether companies that are moving slowly are at a competitive disadvantage. And I meant in particular IBM. And they said, no doubts. They didn't even hesitate. They also spent a fair amount of time bashing CRM. And it was a thinly veiled swipe at Salesforce, obviously. So they're positioning AI control towers as it optimizes AI investments and ensures seamless integration into your enterprise strategies. They carted out a number of companies that are going to be using it, including the NHL, Aptiv, Visa, Wells Fargo. So this is their moment to shine right now. I think they're throwing elbows more so now than they have in the last couple of years. It's interesting to see because they almost want to position themselves as an early leader. And I wonder sometimes the value of the wisdom of doing that because they're going to have to hold up to that point. One stat I will finish with that they mentioned that is very interesting. They cited Gartner, which found that 4% of CIOs think their data is AI ready, and 60% of AI projects will fail because data isn't ready. So as part of that, they're going to be announcing an acquisition of a company called Data World, and they're going to be announcing some workflow data network as well, which they did on Wednesday. So again, ServiceNow is all everything for everybody, or at least that's what they want us to believe.
So here's my take. It's no wonder they took a swipe at Salesforce, because Salesforce also wants to be the AI control center. When you look at the cloud native world, Docker came out with containers and man, it exploded. But it wasn't, and everybody recognized you needed a container control center, an orchestrator, as they called it. And a lot of people threw their hat in the ring. But it wasn't till the community and the market solidified around Kubernetes that you truly had a cloud native ecosystem and a cloud native movement. I think we have a very similar juncture here. Yes, all of these agents that we're going to have, whether they're ephemeral or permanent or what have you, we're going to need orchestrators and managers for the agents. Who gets to be that manager? Is it Salesforce, right? Because they clearly have thrown their hat in and they were a lot earlier than ServiceNow. Is it ServiceNow? Is it IBM? Is it some company we haven't heard of yet? Right? But clearly, everyone recognizes that being the agentic AI orchestrator, is where the money is. Chris, you had your hand up.
Yeah, and so in advising a company, I was trying to think of a way to say this anonymously, but I'll sort of say it out loud for transparency and conflict of interest. So I've been advising a company called Radian that has a new tool using AI for risk and compliance and regulatory things. And I was going through with a financial, just observing as I do the demo, and this exact topic, right? We're not talking about I have an AI. No, you have lots of AI things going on across all sorts of business components, how they relate to each other. You and John, said anything I have to say about ServiceNow and this. You're right. I don't know who's going to win that big thing, but it has to be done. The amount of business value, security value, whatever you want, you can get, in these large enterprises as you understand. Yes, you're understanding the relationships across AI or agentic AI or however you want to call it across your enterprise, but you're understanding your enterprise. And I'm biased right now because I'm advising a company. I've got an interest in this. I keep trying to error check myself. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe it's not all that. Maybe it's not that. But I think it is. The ability. So yes, the ServiceNows and the big players grabbing that control tower spot. Now it's in the time.
There was an interesting thing so I was talking to Amanda Jocelyn, who's she's like a muckety muck who runs AI products at ServiceNow. And one of the things she mentioned about the command center that I thought was interesting is all these AI agents. So I was asking her about the efficiency of the AI agents, and she acknowledged that some are going to be more talented than others. Like in a workforce, there are some employees who outperform others. And she says the command center would have the ability to identify the AI agents that weren't as efficient as others and pluck them out and replace them with someone else. So basically like fire them and replace them. And they also mentioned this idea of the super agent, which we're hearing more and more of, that is in a sense the manager of the agents. So it's kind of evolving. The one question I always want to ask these guys is, okay, ultimately the human oversees the agents. Is there going to be a time within the next couple of years where humans report to agents? And whenever I ask that question, they immediately either shut down or they change the topic. They don't want to talk about it. But I think it's inevitable. And this whole thing is just kind of cascading in so many interesting directions. They care more about productivity and lowering their labor costs and operational costs. But I think it's interesting to see where it goes and how enterprises start using this.
Well, and that's such an interesting litmus strip. I mean, you could mark that in the, what's the analogy, genealogy, right? There's this particular stratum right now where those spending the money and making the decisions to deploy that don't want to address that issue. Because I'll address you for that. Yes. So assume yes. Now, let's start thinking about how we live in that world or don't. Because now is the time to start figuring that out because it's happening now. Agents are telling AI is telling humans what to do today.
So the part that's going to be tricky, though, is I can see how agents will automate a task for me. Great. But let's say I have a set of agents and I optimize them to go do something, aka buy this at the lowest cost. And the other organization has a set of AI agents that says, sell this at the highest margin possible. Then these two things will meet somewhere in the ether and cancel each other out, and they're going to phone home to us humans to sort it out. So I think that there's a a lot of opportunities for these agents, but I don't know how smart they ultimately can get when we start putting agents versus agents together and with diametrically opposed missions.
You need iron on iron to get it sharp, right?
Yeah, again, the short answer there is not very smart, right? They are not very smart. Start a conversation with your favorite AI, with ChatGPT, about itself, right? It's an echo of all we're talking about right now in these sort of things. Is echoes of information off the internet, which is lovely and it's very handy and very useful. And we start applying them in enterprise environments. Yeah, it'll echo our enterprise back to us. But these are not humans. They don't even claim to be humans. They themselves, right?
They're not the droids you're looking for
they're
either,
not the
though,
droids we're
Chris.
looking for. No. So as they tell me to do things as a human, yeah, I get to say, hey, you're absolutely right. No, I'm doing it because I'm the bloody human. And you're wrong, because they are wrong a lot.
And the other thing that ServiceNow and Salesforce needs to be concerned about is, so they provide a lot of services that the agents will invoke, but the only thing I'm going to need on the front end is an AI agent. So basically all these things in the back end become headless services. So am I really going to know that there's a ServiceNow or a Salesforce, or will I care? Or will it all just wind up being, a bunch of internet services that we're calling, but they're unbranded, and I might just swap them out as needed whenever I feel like it. So, what's the point of being them?
Well, I think it's because of the agents of tomorrow, not the agents of today. That sounds like that's a good segue to our Minority Report, right? The agents of tomorrow. I think it's the promise of what these things can do eventually, not necessarily, the relatively simple ones we're seeing today.
Yeah, the one thing, NVIDIA and ServiceNow, they're co-developing a reasoning agent with an incredibly long, complicated name, but they're moving in that direction. You're right; they'll get smarter. I mean, the speed at which they're moving, I wouldn't discount what the abilities of what they can do. But again, what it comes down to is, and I asked, there's a guy I talked to who's in charge of sales to enterprises at ServiceNow, and he says at this point there are so many announcements and such differentiation between them, and there's such a muddled market that the vast number of customers they talk to are overwhelmed and terrified.
Yeah,
They don't know what to do.
Look, this is going to develop. Someone will be the Kubernetes here. I don't know who, when, or what, but there will be. Anyway,
I just want to apologize for my agents. They're being unreasonable today, and I'll speak to them later.
You are not responsible for your agents. Well, you are, but that's agency law. I think that's going to call a wrap on this version of Techstrong Gang. We're out of time. Hey, we've got another great day of Techstrong TV. I think we have a tech field day going on, right? Mobility. My friend Jennifer Manila is out there as one of the delegates, and she's one of the smartest wireless security people I know. So really happy for that. Check that out here on Techstrong TV. We'll be back tomorrow with another gang episode. Until then, this is Alan Schimmel, and we're out.